We ready?
Ready?
Oh, yeah.
At 7 o'clock.
Sign your damn name.
I'm going to call the November 18th, 2021 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order, please. I'm going to start out tonight. If you want to have a comment to make, please get a card from Mr. Shipley and fill it out with your name and the item that you're interested in talking about. Items that are on the agenda will have you make a comment at the time of the item is being discussed. If it's something that's not on the agenda, that will be addressed with the citizens' comment later on. And also, please, we have a sheet back there that you can get that has the public comment protocol. Please abide by that protocol, please. And we limit comments to 5 minutes per individual. Now, when we have the applicant up, we allow them more than 5 minutes because there's a lot of information we need from them and questions that we have from them. But otherwise, for citizens' comments, we ask you to limit that to 5 minutes. We'll start out, Mark, with the approval of the agenda.
There's a couple of recommended changes. Agenda item number 7 has been requested for postponement by the applicant. That's the ball field lighting text amendment workshop discussion. And the other request is to replace for agenda item number 11, which is approval of utilities. We don't have any for those. A consideration from the Planning Commission of creating a steering committee to help the staff make some updates to our pedestrian and bicycle plan and develop some cross sections for our collector and arterial streets. And if the commission feels like that's a good idea, then if they want to consider appointing a representative or representatives at the next meeting, then that's something we can talk about at that point. So with those two amendments, staff recommends approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 2, approval of the minutes of the October the 21st, 2021 meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 3, discussion and public hearing on a final plat for the Brookmere subdivision, Phase 4, 18.8 acres, 11 lots, Zone R-1, OSR, Lynch Survey, LLC applicant.
This is the last phase of Brookmere off of Virtue Road. This phase basically is pretty small as far as the number of lots. Does have a large open space area kind of on the west end of the phase, but it finishes out Reverence Run Lane, and it also provides for a connector street from Brookmere to West Kingsgate Drive. So let me scroll through, and this is kind of a blown up section of the southern part of Phase 4, and then if you look, this is the lower portion, the western part, going down toward Virtue Road. That's a large wooded open space area. It does have a part of a stormwater detention basin in the northwest part of that lot. The remaining comments on this plat were sent over earlier. There's 10 comments. Most of those are pretty straightforward. We have been in conversation with the town attorney, and he's been in conversation with the applicant's attorney on the proper language for the connector street from Reverence Run Lane to West Kingsgate, and so they're developing that. It's probably going to be a public access easement as opposed to a public right-of-way, and that's fine. That actually matches what is over in Kingsgate.
I didn't understand the difference between those two.
Well, there's not really, the way it's crafted in this case, there's really not much difference. One thing that would be a benefit is it wouldn't be necessary to request a variance to the width of the right-of-way. Because normally that would be 50 feet, and this access easement is 30 feet to match the width of the access easement in Kingsgate. So that's really what they were trying to do, is just go ahead and continue that language for the easement that runs across Lot 23 in Kingsgate all the way to Reverence Run Lane, since the whole street is 20 feet wide through that section, and then to have the same language in there that would protect the town's interest. It basically would, for all practical purposes, function as a public right-of-way. It's just a little bit different situation given the context. You know, we kind of are bringing this road into a older development where it really wasn't planned to have a road, so we're trying to minimize the width of it and the character of it to lessen to the greatest extent possible the impact to Kingsgate in this case. So that's why it's a little bit different situation. Unfortunately, the road that does stub into this property from Kingsgate was topographically challenging to extend a road from that, and this was just a more topographically favorable place to extend it. So that's one of the sections, and then just checking with Knox County Addressing about the naming of that. If it probably has to have a name, and we'll have to have street signage to reflect that. There's a question about the drainage easement on Lot 113. And it basically, the easement ends here on the south end. And the question was whether there needed to be any easement beyond that point. And maybe it doesn't need to be. Clarification on the width of the gas line easement. Correcting the setback notes, that will be affected by the easement versus right-of-way anyway. And then the site items from the staff's punch list. This phase was in a much more complete condition than Phase 3. There's still some things on the site punch list, and we're meeting with them next week to review those and ones in Phase 3 that still need to be finished. But it was further along than Phase 3. And then obviously obtaining the signatures, and if the town engineer needs any site completion or drainage street maintenance letters of credit, that would be something that he would need to provide an amount for this phase. And with those subject tos, the staff recommends approval of this phase of Brookmere.
Are you all in agreement with the
Yes, I'm
items?
Russ Rackley with Rackley Engineering, PO Box 30456, Huntsville 37930. Yeah, we respectfully request approval subject to the 10 items.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I'm going to move to approve.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for outdoor seating associated with the Farragut Gateway Restaurant at 103 South Campbell Station Road, Zone C-1. Jacob Ogle, applicant.
Yeah, this is a minor site plan, but it does require a building permit, and typically we bring projects that require a building permit that involve exterior work to the Planning Commission for their consideration. This is a proposal to add outdoor seating area in the space that's kind of between the building, between the two buildings at the Farragut Gateway here at the intersection of South Campbell Station and Kingston Pike. The outdoor seating area would match color and material-wise with the Starbucks outdoor seating area, and they're proposing to string decorative lights between the two to kind of give it some, interest and just to kind of, expand the the effect of the area and energize that space a little bit. All those things we highly encourage in the town, especially in our mixed-use town center, which is where this is located. So we do recommend approval of the outdoor seating project. It's basically about a little over 8 foot wide by 37 foot long space. It's and there would be ample space between that and where the Starbucks area is located to get through there. So with that, the staff recommends approval of this site plan, subject to the decorative string lighting being coordinated with the town staff, and because we are trying to develop and maybe act on some standards for those this evening. And they would just need to follow those. I have forwarded those draft standards to the property owner, so he's aware of those.
Is the applicant here?
Yeah, I think Paul, yeah.
Oh,
You
can you?
come up to
I have a
the,
question for you.
tell us who you are and give us an address.
Paul Schaefer, 742 Cabot Drive, Knoxville, 37934.
Thank you.
Of course.
Paul, I'm just asking, just because I'm curious, you could, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, you could extend this a little bit further, and you guys didn't. There's one more window space that you could extend it to. What's up with that?
We actually wanted to make it the whole length of that.
Yeah.
And we got into a seating issue, an overall seat issue. So that's why
Parking
we-
and
Well,
capacity and.
There's a percentage issue, I think, is probably what he's referring to. That's to do with percentage of outdoor versus indoor seating.
So we wanted to do it, but this was the most we could get.
Did look at it as a conscious decision to have to do this.
Can I ask a question? Because you seem familiar with it.
I've just dealt with outdoor seating before.
I understand that. Certainly, in the day of COVID, that is something a lot of restaurants are looking for, and certainly people are looking for. Is that something we need to take a look at in our code to
Well,
further
I
investigate?
think this would probably be something that would be more applicant-driven, and I don't necessarily think that that we've ever had anybody necessarily despondent over the amount of outdoor seating, but Paul could correct me and say, well, gosh, we'd really like to have more if we were eligible for more. But, typically it has, if the back of house, i.e. the kitchen, can handle it, and parking is definitely is something to think about, especially with restaurants and peak times.
Well,
But
that was,
might be something that we revisit. Outdoor seating, it's actually kind of amazing that with pre-COVID, if it was 85 or 90 degrees, people didn't sit outside. But during COVID, when even the kind of the shoulder seasons and temperatures that were not necessarily pleasant prior to COVID became pleasant during COVID. Now, are those changes? Are they going to stick around? And are those trends going to stick around? I don't know. But you definitely kind of open up some dialogue. Maybe there's some opportunity for some changes to help some of our local businesses be successful with trying to reevaluate some of the outdoor seating allowances, if you want to call it.
I'm just
Yeah, I
letting you
think
know
it's-
that I'm very open to that discussion. If you guys are interested, and that was the only thing that was reserving you from asking for more, I think that's a discussion we need to have. We need to roll with these changes that are upon us, and I'm not sure that they're going away.
I'm guessing
So-
that's related to the building and fire code. Is that what it is
I
with
think
the
it-
occupancy?
Yeah, I think it was the occupancy.
Yeah, occupancy.
So
that's-
occupancy, and that's in our fire code, is that in our, any of our, where would that be? In the main fire code, or is it in one of the appendix? Do you know?
I'd have to get with the fire marshal on that. As far as from a zoning perspective, as long as you leave at least 5 feet of clear space and you
Yep.
meet the ADA requirements, you could have a larger area than what they're showing here,
All right.
from my perspective. But, there's
But
like
there's
to-
other issues that we may not be thinking about.
that-
I would like to look at a larger area for it to cover that window and come on out there. Even if you have to limit the number of tables and chairs, it would give you more room between tables and chairs. And during COVID, everybody wanted to be spaced out away from each other, and I think that we probably, if we could let them bring that on over to where they could space tables and chairs away from each other, Father, it would.
Yeah, it'd probably be one more space. I think you got 5 tables out there, Paul.
If you can't get the tables in, the expense of adding that is why bother, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's other issues, fire code. or
And maybe down the
seating.
road, we may look at it differently.
Paul, we have your
yeah,
contact
totally.
information, right?
Yes.
This is something I'd like to talk to Dan a little bit more and flesh that out with him, and pursue that, and maybe even if you're not interested, it's just something I think we need to look
Yeah,
at,
And
so.
I'll talk with the architect and,
And more importantly, does your tenant, or is your tenant even interested in having more?
yeah. no,
Outdoors.
They would,
Can we put you on the spot? We don't have to. You don't have to necessarily name the tenant. But can you tell us what type of food it is? What type of? I could walk to from my house to here.
Food they cook.
it's going to be a place that everybody here will like to go, and everybody will be happy to bring their families.
Cheers.
Be a very nice,
All right, good.
very nice bar, nice craft cocktail program. So
Okay, great.
It's going to be something everybody will, I think, enjoy.
Okay, great.
All right, I'm going to
I'll
reach
get back
out
to
to
you.
Dan and have a conversation with him.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But in the meantime, are we,
Move to approve.
okay.
This-
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item number 5, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for improvements mostly on the property of 13127 Kingston Pike and associated with AgPro, formerly Farragut Lawn and Tractor, at 13131 Kingston Pike, Zone C-1. Stuart Ritchie, applicant.
This is a project we've talked about. We reviewed it in August as a concept plan, just to get some preliminary feedback from you all on what they would like to do with storage of merchandise on the property to the east of what is now AgPro. It was Farragut Lawn and Tractor, because they're trying to expand the business, but they don't have enough physical space on their property. They've tried to purchase the property to the east, but they've been unsuccessful in trying to do that. So now they've got a lease agreement to use part of that property to store additional equipment over there, not displayed, to store at this time. And then to construct a small parking lot for the employees on the southeast part of that property in this location here. They had to make a revision from what was presented in the packet to the stormwater area, and per some discussion with the actual property owner. So part of the detention basin is now in this area here, so it will take a little bit of their outdoor storage away, but this property owner didn't apparently want the basin in the original location that was shown. So they have amended that, and we've looked at it internally. We didn't see any issues with it. In fact, it's probably better from our perspective, but so again, I point that out. The other thing that we talked about at the staff developer meeting, there's an existing fence out there now, but they're going to have a black fence. It's proposed as chain link, and it would basically be at least 6 feet tall and encompass that storage area. They'll also be building, as part of the site, a sidewalk across the frontage, and they'll tie it into the sidewalk that's actually constructed across AgPro's property at this point. So actually right here, they're bringing a connector sidewalk up to the proposed sidewalk that they'll be building on the property to the east. So it's pretty simple site plan from the staff's perspective. We had a few minor comments that remain, but we do recommend approval of the site plan, subject to the 7 comments that were listed in the amended staff recommendation form that was sent out, and it's at your places. Most of those, you'll notice, are just the typical reminders like drainage fee, letter of credit, notice of coverage, TDOT permit, because they are going to be working out in the state right-of-way at the access point and with the sidewalk. So staff recommends approval of the site plan subject to those 7 items.
Are you all well, first tell us who you are and give us an address, and then are you all right with these, working with these 7 requirements?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Stuart Ritchie with Acpro Companies at 13131 Kingston Pike, and the company is agreeable to the conditions that are laid out.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Mark, do you have the revised stormwater plan? Is it available on the?
Yeah, we do have it. I don't have it on the PowerPoint. I might have one sheet of it. Let me see. Yeah, this is it. If you can see that, that's the revised one. So this area back here was originally part of the paved storage area, but now that's going to be detention. And then the
Is it
outfall.
inside the fence or outside the fence?
Well, it'll be outside the fence will be amended as far as the location.
Okay.
I'm assuming. Isn't that right, Annette?
Yeah, the pond will be inside the fence.
Oh, is it going to be
Okay.
inside it? Okay. Okay.
Stuart, it seems like as much room as you have, it makes sense to push it further back, but your landlord's just not amenable to.
The landlord was not amenable to any detention outside the fenced area.
It just seems like someday when that site is redeveloped, the whole detention pond is going to be torn out and pushed further back. But it is what it is.
That is what it is.
How are you dealing with like your water quality? What systems are you using for water quality? Do you know? Or maybe the staff might be something. The staff's.
Yeah, the project engineer's here. She can talk about the specifics.
I mean,
of that.
there's a lot of different philosophies that you can implement with this. I'm just kind of curious. If there was a particular system that you embrace more than other systems.
On this particular one, there's very little additional water. Sorry, Annette Hummel, Site Incorporated, 10215 Technology Drive, Suite 304, Knoxville. There's very little additional water that we're having to deal with.
Well, I'm not talking about necessarily the quantity. I'm talking about more dealing with water quality.
We're using first flush.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because there's not much water
Right.
coming off of there, so.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for either the applicant or Annette?
I'm going to move to approve with the 7 conditions.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Item number 6, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the expansion to the dining room area at Big Kahuna Wings, 12828 Kingston Pike, 1.38 acres, Zone C-1, R2R Studio LLC applicant.
And this is another project that we looked at as a concept plan, and that was back in July to give them some feedback, really particularly on the parking and whether it was sufficient. Basically, the understanding is there's actually 2 buildings on the property. This building is apparently not being used in association with the BKW, so the commission was fine just using the actual restaurant building, and then with the proposed expansion, which is in the darker gray, to determine the parking space ratios, and it's right at the requirements if you just use that one building. So it's about a 400 square foot expansion on the west side there. You can see toward Kingston Pike and Hobbs Road. The one thing we talked about at the staff developer meeting, I want to make sure the planning commission is okay with it, is that the building, what they're proposing to do is just to, instead of the new part being 75% masonry, they're proposing to basically match the materials and colors of the existing building with the expansion. So that's something y'all would need to specifically be okay with if you are okay with that.
Do they need a variance or it's
No,
just
they
something
wouldn't
we
need
need
a
to approve?
variance, but it's just something that, from a staff's perspective, we're fine with it. We understand the logic of it. It might look frankly, a little out of character if you did try to add masonry to it, to one part of the building. There's a couple of things they're going to be cleaning up with this site plan. There's some structures that have kind of been added out there over the last few years and really need to be screened. There's a cooler in the back, and then some Some other areas, some of the existing screen fence just needs to be reconstructed and replaced. We talked about that at the staff developer meeting. One of the comments that was at your places originally was dealing with the freestanding cooler, and we got some revised information this afternoon, and I ran that by the fire marshal, and he's actually okay with, in terms of egress, with the cooler being remaining where it's at. It still has at least 36 inches of clear space, and they are going to be screening it. It's kind of out unscreened right now, so they will be making a existing situation better with this project. They are proposing wood fencing, and the staff did question as to whether they could use a more durable material that would require less long-term maintenance, and we still have that as a consideration in the staff's recommendation. And then, whatever you all end up being comfortable with, that they include a detail of that proposed fencing. But comment number 2 can be stricken from the subject twos, because that has been reviewed and addressed internally. And I think 1 probably has 2, but the fire marshal didn't have a chance to check that, so it's pretty minor. It's just dealing with fire flow calculations, and that's a typical requirement that we look at when people are adding on or new construction.
Have we not checked that once before?
Well, I think it needed to be updated in relation to the expansion. I mean, I'm sure we checked it from the last time they did something out there, but anytime you add physical space, you need to reevaluate that and update the numbers, make sure it's still sufficient.
So you think Dan has done that, you just don't have the updated information, is that?
Well, it'll have to be a subject to from the staff's perspective, because I haven't heard back on that. 1 and 3 would still be subject tos from the staff's perspective. We still would like to see a composite fence as opposed to wood, because I think it would last longer.
Can you tell us who you are? And
Yeah, Matt Beeler, excuse me, 12828 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, 37934. On the fencing, I guess the only thing, I don't want to have to replace composite fencing every time somebody backs into it, so.
It'll be fresh fencing then, is what you're saying?
Yes,
on a
it's
pretty
going to be
regular
fresh.
basis?
We're going to paint it to match the building, so it'll look nicer even than just the wooden fence that's just finished. That's the only concern I have is with the composite. Again, I can't control somebody backing into it. I've already repaired the fence a few times, so that would be my only question for you all, is if we could at least that one fence anyway, not have composite.
That one fence is right here, and I can't imagine somebody would back
No,
into
I'm
that.
sorry. I was talking about the fence that we are.
Oh, back here
Correct.
on this? Yeah.
Which is.
Yeah, they could do that, yeah. They could back into that. I would suggest if you could, you are proposing a 7-foot fence here to screen this cooler. And maybe that should at least be composite, because I can't imagine anybody would hit that. If they do, you got some problems.
And it's more visible.
More visible, yeah.
And
Yeah,
so the
more
one in the back isn't as
Yeah,
visible.
back here, that makes sense probably, because I could see somebody hitting that, and it looks like somebody has in the past.
Are you
some of that.
comfortable with that, Matt?
Yes, I'm comfortable. Is the
Okay.
composite that we do, we just try to get close to building color or specific colors that
Yeah, I
gotta get
mean,
approved?
again, it's up to the planning commission. I mean, if you all think that all wood would match better, that's up to you all. I was just trying to think of something that would have more of a long-term, aesthetically pleasing look to it, because wood just, it just ages over time, and it just is, a lot of times just doesn't look as well as it ages, so. And it's really in a different viewpoint area, because
Yeah.
you won't be looking at the screen fencing at the same time, so I don't know that it would necessarily be a problem if they're not identical, but it would just need to be a color, that matches the other fencing, the other wood fencing to the greatest extent possible in the building.
We have Mark also, the one that we're going to have that wraps around the HVAC unit. So there'll be two over there that would be composite.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right here on this.
You could just,
In that
you could
area.
just use Hardy, couldn't you? I mean, that's what the
Yeah,
building,
Hardy.
the building is Hardy plank.
Yeah,
Same
that's
color?
really what I that's
So
fine.
going to a horizontal Hardy and doing it that way.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Or you could, if you wanted to, I mean, I don't know if it'd look funny to have a lap style siding on a screen wall, but you could do, like a board and bat. I mean, if you felt like there was a texture change that would architecturally be appropriate, but maybe still the same color.
Yeah.
But it would last longer, and quite frankly, it's not going to be really any more expensive than like a cedar or something like that.
And I would rather have it match the building myself, so
Yeah.
I'm perfectly
Yeah,
fine with
whatever,
that.
I mean-
I was more concerned about the back one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
What's the box at the end of the new dining room? Out of just sheer curiosity.
HVAC unit.
You're putting a new air handler package unit in that area, and
And
then the big
screening.
fenced-in area behind it. What is that?
The fence that Mark referenced just basically screens the
Walk-in cooler.
box. That's
Oh, I got you.
There's a fence here, and
Yeah.
then there'll be a fence around the new unit here.
Okay,
And then,
I got you.
And then replacement fence back here.
What's in the framing line is the ductwork.
that comes up and goes into
Okay, I got you. I couldn't for the life of me figure out. I didn't know if you were
You remember
putting
how
in like
much
a little
fun that
fireplace there
HVAC's
in the
been in
dining
that
room.
building?
Yeah.
I know you remember that.
Yes, I do remember.
Similar questions or comments?
None.
Move to approve with the two conditions.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Item number 8, discussion and public hearing on a request to amend the Farragut Municipal Code Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 3, Section 14, B7E, to provide for sign-related amendments associated with regional recreation entertainment facilities and clarification related to the master sign for the unified development, and provided for in the Outlet Drive Regional Entertainment and Employment District, ARCO Murray Construction applicant.
Yeah, this was discussed last month, and there were, initially, the applicant, Topgolf, came to us with a request to allow for a canopy sign to be placed at the end of a structural canopy that's kind of along their main entrance. And then in looking at some of the other signage, they requested to have larger signs on the ends of the building, the one facing the interstate and Outlet Drive, given the building's kind of unusual shape, to help balance the signage in relation to the overall scale of the building. So we looked at that, and then the staff also brought up the language dealing with the master sign for unified development, and talked about the intent of that sign and just whether that might need to be a little bit more clear, that you don't have to have all the intended 3 businesses or tenants in place before you can approve and construct the sign. That basically the important thing is that the recorded declaration provides for that, and the sign is constructed on the front end with the appropriate tenant panels to reflect that, so that when those tenants do come about, because it could be 2 or 3 or 4 years from now before all 3 tenants are out there. We got Topgolf, but we don't know for sure what the other 2 are yet. That the sign will be ready to accommodate those businesses. And that was always the intent of this sign. It's intended to be kind of a Outlet Drive corridor sign to in between Lovell Road and Campbell Station Road to accommodate regional-oriented uses in this zoning district, the Outlet Drive Regional Entertainment Employment District that we created in working with Topgolf. So In the ordinance that's before you, 2119, staff has tried to address all three of those items. We are providing for at least one of the two signs that would be on the building elevation that has at least 400 feet in length. That's the main entrance elevation. For one of those two signs to be a canopy sign, provided that it's mounted on a structural canopy that's integral to the architecture of the building, and that the sign is not a cabinet-style sign, but rather a sign with channel letters, both of which would be consistent with what they're proposing. And then on the other two signs on the ends, we're proposing to increase the ratio of sign area to building width from 1:1 to 2:1. And that's actually consistent with the ratio that's currently permitted on the main elevation, the elevation that has more than 400 feet. So all the ratios in relation to wall signage would be consistent. And then thirdly, looking at the language dealing with the master sign for unified development, just making it a little more clear about the intent, that it needs to basically just be set up on the front end to accommodate the intended number of tenants, and that language would need to be reviewed and approved by the town attorney, and any changes to that would also have to go through the town attorney with him making a recommendation to the town. So those are the three main proposed amendments in ordinance 2119, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Mark, how many plaques are there that will go on that one sign?
The language in the ordinance says you have to have at least three. Because what we didn't want was to basically, we had a billboard that was out there, and they've removed that. We didn't want to just add back another billboard that basically was for one entity. We wanted it to be a corridor sign, kind of like what's on the south side of the interstate with the Turkey Creek development, to where you have some of the tenants listed on that master sign. That's in fact where that language came from, was from the city of Knoxville.
So
and
we're
what they
talking
did
at
with
least
that.
three.
At least three.
There'll be space for more if,
Well, they'll probably just set it up for three, yeah. And that's all that would be required. They could potentially design it to where they might have a space where something could be dropped in there in the future, but that's the minimum.
what I was wondering, if at some point in time there'll need to be more sign on the interstate, additional.
Well, it's specific to this zoning district, and there's probably not a lot of other properties that aren't already zoned that would be rezoned to this district. In fact, I don't know of any that would be.
And a lot of them, the property is on Knox County further down.
Yeah. And then once you get further west, then that you get back in the county there too. Now, the boat storage is in the Moses Water Sports that we've looked at. That would be one of the entities that could go there because they are zoned, they're in that district. So they would be one. And then obviously Topgolf. And then somebody else at a minimum.
Anybody else have any questions?
Do you have any issues? Go ahead and your name and address.
So I'm Sam Alley. I'm with the Topgolf's National Signage Partners SEMA Network, 121 New Britain Boulevard, Chalfont, PA. No, we've been in communication with Mark, and we're happy to proceed as follows.
Anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Move to approve resolution PC 21-16, which recommends approval of ordinance 21-19.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for coming down.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Item number 9, discussion and public hearing on update to the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 4, Section 13, outdoor site lighting, Town of Farragut applicant.
This item we also talked about last month as a workshop, and just to give you a little background, you know, when we got the request to look at the ball field lights, the staff knew and has known for a while that our outdoor site lighting needed to be updated. It's in the zoning ordinance. It's only a couple of pages currently, and frankly, lighting is kind of like telecommunications. It changes all the time, and there's a lot newer technologies and some newer applications. People are using certain lights that on non-residential properties that they really haven't historically used very much. So like the string lights, bollard lights, those kind of things. And we really don't have any standards in place for those. So some of the things we talked about last month was, you know, establishing standards for the decorative string lights, because I think as a town we want to probably be encouraging that, especially in our town center. It gives it kind of a festive atmosphere. And then to try to look at LED lighting, which is mostly what you see in the, well, most all new lighting, frankly. And this, is there ways to kind of address the brightness of some of that light and some of the glare. So we have been fortunate. We've had a resident that lives in the town that also is a lighting expert, and he's here. So Mark Pilson has really helped us tremendously in going through these issues and trying to figure out some reasonable standards that are relatively simple to apply, because it would need to be for me to deal with it. But it's something that I think would give us some, you know, performance standards for some of these things and update some of our other existing provisions. So in the process of trying to go through this, I basically redid the whole ordinance. You know, I took the technical feedback from Mark, but then reorganized the ordinance to make things easier to find, to group information. So if you're looking for pole light information, it's all basically in one section. The lighting requirements has also been something that I've had problems with lighting, electrical engineers having confusion over what they need to submit. So one of the things I wanted to do was try to group that information and list it out, so it was real easy for them to see what they need to submit with a lighting plan. And then, of course, to, you know, develop those standards for some of the lights that we don't have standards for, like the Kelvin. We talked about Kelvin temperature a little bit. And what that does, and Mark, you can jump in if I'm saying something wrong, because I probably will be. But the Kelvin really goes from 1,000 to 10,000. This just shows 3 to 7. But the lower the number, the kind of the softer, more yellow kind of the light, and the higher the number, the perceived bright light that you would see, more of almost like a blue light. Like daytime lighting is around 5,000 K if you're just outside. So what we were trying to do there is to take the Kelvin temperature as a performance standard to address the brightness of particularly LED, to try to lessen the glare. So what we settled on as a recommended standard was 4,000 K, and that was selected because, as I understand it, that's mostly what you see in exterior lighting right now. So it's readily available information and product. If you go to like dark skies literature, they're going to talk about recommending a lower, maybe down to 3,000. And we are recommending that for the decorative string lights. And that might be something to talk about if you all want some lower standard than 4,000. It would give you a little bit softer, warmer kind of light if you went with a lower standard. But it would probably be a little bit, out of sync with other exterior lighting that you might see that's already installed or in the surrounding area. So that's something to think about.
Mark, for string lights, is 3,000 Kelvin, is that you'll find that, you can find those commercially? I just want to make sure we're not putting our restaurant folks in a condition where they can't find that.
Right. Yeah, there's typically no.
Tell us who you are first.
My apologies. Mark Pilson with work for a company called Lighting Trends, and I reside at 214 Oren Road here in Farragut. With the discussion that we had about 3,000 Kelvin, that was the maximum. So a lot of string lights are available in warmer temperatures, but you typically see like a 2,700, 3,000 in that range commonly available.
All right. That's all I'm concerned about. Thank
Sure.
you. And thank you for contributing. These are, sometimes it's really hard
Sure.
to wrap your brain around this stuff, so.
My pleasure. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I've had a lot of experience with trying to work within the regulations within the town and everything, and sometimes it was a little challenging. So if I can assist in making things easier for everybody, I felt like that would help. Sure.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Any questions on any of the other information? Just showing you some other stuff. There's language in there about cutoff, full cutoff, and non-cutoff. Full cutoff basically means that there's no light that's above 90 degrees. So most of the recommended fixtures that we have are going to be full cutoff. And so I guess a key objective of our existing ordinance and then what's in this is basically to try to hide the source of light as best you can, because that's really a source of glare when it's not hidden properly. And one of the things with the string lights, the reason we went with a lower Kelvin was it does give that softer light that you would probably want in that kind of setting, that kind of atmosphere. And again, I'm not sure if 4,000 Kelvin is okay, or should it be it should be lower. I don't think it should be any higher for sure.
I think it's okay. It gives some latitude to
Yeah.
people on what they choose.
It seems
but
like
it's still,
a pretty common standard, and Mark, I'll rely on Mark's expertise on that, certainly a lot more than mine. I did some reading on it too. There are some concerns about the higher you get on the Kelvin temperature with potential effects on your vision, potentially on your health in general. So we definitely, I think, want to not get any higher than that for sure.
And AMA has done Ms. Brokowski sent me an article where they just recently did a study on that.
Mm-hmm.
And they, it was very interesting and timely in that's what they were talking about, is the higher the Kelvin, the brighter the light, it can be harmful to your eyes, but also, I guess, when you're exposed to it for sleep and it's not really good for you.
I think the Dark Skies Institute, or whatever their official name is, they recommend not any higher than 3,000 K. Now that's just their recommendation, but 4,000 K, I think, Mark, is probably a much more common kind of standard.
It is. I just wanted to add the one comment. The metal halide lamp that we've typically used for site lighting for many years and is actually out in your parking lot right now outside this building, those typically run right around 4,000 K. You can get them in warmer temperatures, but what you typically see is a metal halide lamp around 4,000 K. So it's very common. And when LEDs were first introduced, the higher Kelvin temperatures were much more efficient, which is why you saw, a lot of companies, saying, okay, we can do a 6,000 Kelvin and we can do a 6,500. And those kind of lights are very perceptively very bright, as far as what your eye perceives. So there's considerable difference there between, even a 5,000K and a 4,000K when you see them next to each other.
I think the last time you were with us, which has been a while ago, we talked about the security aspect of it. Is this 3,000, 4,000 enough for safety and security?
I'll say that I think that it can be. When you get into warmer color temperatures, and I'll reference another traditional source, high pressure sodium, that is a very warm color temperature, probably somewhere around the 2,500 Kelvin, even lower, and that does not render color very well at all. So as far as security goes, if a crime's committed, being able to identify what kind of colors you're seeing, the really warmer temperatures, you'll kind of lose that. So 3,000 Kelvin is certainly within a good range. You might get a little bit of different perception on color, but it's not anything like, being around 2,500 and lower. But 3,000 is available. 3,500 for site lighting is much more available if you want a happy medium. But 3,000 is a little bit harder to get. As Mark mentioned, 4,000 is very common.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
None.
I will say I think there's still, the electrical engineer's still looking at it, is that right? And I don't think he had any major thing that stood out, but if he has something, when it goes to the board, I'll report that, and we may have to tweak that a little bit, but I don't imagine it would be anything significant. But Mark asked an electrical engineer that actually prepares lighting plans to look at this language and make sure it was reasonable and it addressed everything that he felt like needed to be addressed in terms of what the town's trying to achieve. So hopefully we'll get that feedback, and there won't be much, if any, changes to what we're proposing.
I have a question. Were there any suggestions that you felt strongly about that did not get incorporated into this?
No, actually, Mark used pretty much all of my suggestions, which I appreciate.
I had to, because I didn't know what I was doing.
We did change some wording around and things like that, that I think will really help.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did Tom Hale need to look at this?
I can send it to him, but I know he's not. I'm not really worried about this one because there's not really.
Thank you.
He's not. He's going to know even less than I do about it.
Okay.
Now he might, and I don't really see any legal problems with it. I mean, personally, it's just trying to establish some standards and address some things that we don't currently address. So I can, if you want me to, run it through him. It's fine, but I really don't think he would have any comment on it.
It's your call.
So the only change we're proposing is just allowing the string lights to go up to 4,000 K. Is that the only change?
I think we're just keeping that at 3.
We're gonna keep the string at 3 and the other one's at 4.
Yeah, because I think that's the effect you want, and like Mark said, I think most of those are around 2,500 anyway, or so.
Okay.
They're probably a little lower K anyway.
Typically, you see those used in residential applications. It's just more recently they've become popular in, outdoor settings for restaurants and things like that. So that's why you kind of lean towards the warmer temperatures. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a question.
Oh,
Sure.
I don't understand what you're fixing to vote on.
Go up.
Can you
Go up.
explain what that ordinance says?
Yeah, well, if you want to go up there, David, I can Yeah, I can go through.
Can you come up and just give us your name and address so we can have you for the record?
He may not have a copy of the actual ordinance.
I do not.
Okay, that's,
Say
that,
this.
herein lies the problem.
One thing it doesn't do, it doesn't address at all is ball field lights. There's nothing in there about
How
ball
about
field
pole
lights.
lights?
All it does with pole lights is clarifies what we already have.
David White, 314 Vista Trail, Bel
Yeah.
Air subdivision.
The height is still the same, David. Basically, the 4,000K is a new standard, but it's consistent with what we already have with most of our pole lights, parking lot
Are you
lights.
speaking LED though, or?
Yeah, well, most of frankly, probably about all the fixtures on new or replacement lights are going to be LED, yeah.
But you're not required to use LED. We're not requiring.
No, you're not.
The color temperature can actually apply to incandescent or metal halide or metal sodium
Yeah, but
or
it
mercury
doesn't
vapor.
have the same effect.
Well, it's more about energy consumption than it is.
No, it's more about the American Medical Association and the damaged LED lights, in contrast to the other lights at above 3,000 can do to the human body.
Yeah, I don't think we've addressed in the health concerns in this particular ordinance.
I don't think you have. I gave a copy of one. It'd be.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up about the 3,000 versus the
It'd be beneficial
4,000.
to go to the American Medical Society or whatever.
Now
And the effect of LED lights,
It's
because there's all kinds of conditions in there. Now, those above 3,000 can affect your retina, affect your sleep, affect animal migration, can affect could cause a whole lot of medical issues. They put them in New York City, it'll tell you in that article Mark says, and they had to take them out. They had to take I think they had 4,000 or 5,000 K bulbs, and they had to change them all because they had too many issues. So I just wanted to make sure we wasn't approving something right now that we'd regret later.
Well, and that was dealing mostly with street lights, that document you gave me. And I don't know about street lights. That's probably something it's not addressed in these provisions because these are dealing with private property. But that is probably something that, working with LCUB and others, we probably need to look at to see. I don't know what.
It's street lights or pole lights, Mark.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the height is. If you're looking up at that light,
Right.
you put them on a tennis court and you're looking up at that light and it's above 4,000, you could be damaged physically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I don't know what these are. These are probably well above 4,000.
I'd be willing to bet those are 3,500.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Now, this one shining on us right here, that one's much higher than that. You can see the blue in that one.
I'll read you one thing out of and this is for another day, but this is a brochure that was furnished on these lights that someone intends to try to put them here in one sentence. But it's a tool, not a solution. Controlling the LED intense rifle shot of light is challenging. That's what we're talking about. If you read that American Medical Association report, you'll get all kinds of information. But if you look up at one of those lights for any length of time, you got some issues. It can damage several parts of the body. And they talk about shielding. It's good information. I would recommend that you just pull it up and do some reading.
Mr. White, just for future reference, because you said you didn't have this in front of you to look at it, about a week, I'm not sure if you go to our website to go to the agendas to look up what's going on in the meeting.
I have not.
Okay, a week before, usually Mark will put it out about 2 weeks before he'll put the agenda out. And about a week before they'll amend the agenda, if you go back into that link, it will have all of what we have in front of us. This packet will be online for you to read through. This is just a recommendation. This is an ordinance change, so it will go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Jeannie had sent me out a article. I'll forward that on to all of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. If you'll look over this and see what we have approved, this will be coming up. It may not be at our next meeting. It'll probably be in our January meeting, I would think, right?
Yeah, board meeting, yeah, probably so,
It'll be at
yeah. Mm-hmm.
in our first January meeting. This will be on for first reading.
Okay.
And
One
that'd be an
thing
opportunity to discuss it.
And this does actually help what your concern is, David, because right now, we don't have any brightness limitations. So somebody could go out in this parking lot back here and put fixtures that were 6,000 Kelvin. And so what we're trying to do is to at least have some performance standards, some limitations for that with this in this ordinance here. And we settled at 4,000 because it was a pretty common standard for the exterior application throughout the country. But if the board ultimately wants to do something lower than that, like 3,500 or whatever, that it doesn't matter to me. What we were trying to do was, we're not changing any of the other physical aspects of pole lights or wall lights. We were trying to take those lights, and where there weren't current standards, like the standard of addressing the brightness of LED, that's exactly why we've got the Kelvin Temperature standard in this draft ordinance. We don't have that now. So
Right.
There's no limitation on it. People can go out and put 7,000 Kelvin in their parking lot, and it'd just be a big runway, airport runway look to it. So that's what we're trying to do here. So I think it's actually beneficial from what you're talking about. Whether 4,000 or 3,500 is ultimately what we should do, is ultimately probably going to be up to the board.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Mr. White.
Okay, so we have a motion and a first and second.
I had a motion. I don't know if I had a second. Did I have a second?
I'll second it.
You second that? Okay. Okay.
Okay, for the vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And thank you for your input, we appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And the next time we have a volunteer dinner, you're definitely invited.
Sure, I agree, because I couldn't have done it without his assistance, that's for sure.
Thank you. Item number 10, discussion and public hearing on a resolution to adopt site-related requirements that must be satisfactorily completed prior to the final plat being considered for approval by the Planning Commission. Town of Farragut applicant.
This item was also discussed last month as a workshop. And what we talked about was the staff had internally developed a checklist for site completion items to help make sure that we didn't forget something before a final plat was signed off on. And there'd been some plats that have come before the Planning Commission where, from the staff's perspective, the field items, the site items weren't up to a standard that we felt was acceptable for the plat to be presented to the Planning Commission. So what we did was we looked through the checklist and we developed site items in there that we felt like absolutely had to be finished before the plat was presented to the Planning Commission for approval. Those are mostly kind of health safety related, but there's also some language in there dealing with, properly preparing the soil, the ground surface, so that with favorable conditions, weather conditions, that the vegetative cover will be established. That was something that was discussed last month. There was some concern about trying to establish a grass cover in certain times of the year. So what we went back and focused on is the main thing. What we want you to do is get the ground ready get it matted, get it ready to where, when it is appropriate, that you put grass seed or hydro seed on it, it's likely to produce the desired stand of perennial grass. And that's been a problem, frankly, in the past, is these sites that aren't properly prepared, they don't grade it, it's lumpy, it's not smoothed down to where it's in a mowable condition, they don't have adequate topsoil down, so it's in a condition to where it's not likely to produce a grass stand. So that's kind of what we focused the language on under 1. And actually the changes that I'd sent over to you all this afternoon were recommended. I sent this out to some people that do engineering present plans to the town just to get their feedback. And they made a couple of suggestions for clarification. And the first one dealt with the removal of the plat from the next planning commission agenda if the items that we identified in red weren't properly addressed, and to change that language to that the plat will be requested for postponement. There was some concern that removal from the next planning commission agenda meant that they'd have to reapply, which is really not the intent. But postponement is fine, so we were fine with that suggestion. And then also in terms of sidewalks, we've always allowed developers to place a letter of credit on sidewalk sections where house lots were to be constructed in the future. And that was the initial language in the ordinance, that sidewalks had to be finished except those that were in front of house lots where a sidewalk was required. And there was something that was brought to my attention I frankly didn't think about. There might be other lots that would have future structures, future improvements that would involve crossing the front of the property where the sidewalk would be, to build those structures, and that those maybe should also be included in the letter of credit that would allow a sidewalk to be constructed after they're built. And that could involve like a clubhouse that's built later on, or a mail kiosk, which are now required. Maybe they don't have that built yet prior to presenting a final plat to the planning commission. So it's something that they could put the sidewalk in when that construction is complete. And that was really the intent of allowing that to happen on house lots, is because it didn't make any sense to the staff or the developer to put the sidewalk in and then you come in and build the house and you tear it all to pieces and you just got to redo it. It's just a waste of money and resources. And so we've amended that language, or we're proposing to amend that language to also address those non-house lots that may have planned improvements, and the sidewalk can be built on those in the future as well, but covered by a letter of credit. And I think that's mostly it. There's a little minor clarification on proof rolling, which we can make that change too. It was mainly semantics, but that was pretty much it. And we're recommending approval of this in a resolution, because I think it gives a little more teeth to the requirements, their expectations. And honestly, the feedback I received from the engineers that looked at this was that they actually liked this because they knew what the expectations were, even though we've kind of known what they are, but they're spelled out very clearly. And if you don't have them and they're not ready, you won't be heard at the planning commission meeting. It'll be requested for postponement. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if y'all have any on this.
Mark, I have one.
Okay.
If you have a curb cut that goes across the sidewalk, I've seen situations where that needs to be fixed, but it seems like it's about the last thing that gets done. And then it,
Like a curb cut to build a new house or something? Is that, are you talking about?
the subdivision,
Oh, you mean on the main road?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Grigsby Chapel.
Okay,
Grigsby Chapel being a good example.
yeah.
That sidewalk's been closed for a long time.
Let's see. Is that, you think that's, needs to be clarified in here?
I think so.
Let's see if,
Well, are they, where are they in there? Don't we have do we have an approved preliminary plat for them?
yeah, oh, yeah.
We did that.
So
Yeah.
where, and this
year
is
ago.
for final plat? This is for final plat,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I mean, surely all that would have to be put back and the sidewalk would have to be reopened before we would grant a final
Oh,
plat.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would. It would. But I think what the mayor's talking about is people use that facility a lot, and if it's, they're in there grading and messing around for 2 years, you got a sidewalk section that's unusable.
It's dangerous right now. I mean, there's a,
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, because your construction entrance is gonna be a gap to where it's not going, you won't have the sidewalk there, because the construction entrance is gonna be there.
well, they just cut into the sidewalk and just left it sticking up, basically sticking up in the air
It's kind of a tripping, yeah.
with no barriers or nothing on it, so.
Well, that needs to be addressed, and by
I just-
us, we need to get out there and, sounds
I've had a
like
lot of
that's-
complaints from residents.
Yeah, that sounds like a kind of a safety issue. That kind of situation needs to be addressed at that time, so we need, I'll look into that and see if we
Okay.
can get that.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Anybody else with any questions or comments?
I do. Just one point. I know that this has been a source of frustration for us because you feel compelled to bring it because they're asking for it to be brought to us. I just want to affirm that we trust the staff's ability to make that call. I can read this and kind of understand it, but for me to really digest this and understand what that means, that's like trying to read building codes. I have my line that I draw, and that's where I draw my line.
Yeah, I think
So-
it's pretty clear to us, and I mean, if somebody's, 99% there, we're reasonable, but if it's pretty clear and we go out there for that reinspection that it's in the condition of some of these have been, then we'll just be recommending postponement, and they'll
Okay.
know about it.
Yep.
We're gonna hand this out, if y'all approve it, we're gonna hand it out to contractors and developers before we issue a grading permit. So that they have to sign it and give us a copy that they received it. And the logic of that is there's documentation that they have been made aware of the standards before they even broke ground
Yep.
on the project.
Okay.
And hopefully they'll plan ahead and it won't be as big of a issue that it's been, in a couple of instances here recently. So I think it'll help everybody. They know what we expect. The planning commission knows. The staff knows. So I think it's a good thing.
I'm going to move to approve PC 21-15 with the minor modifications 1 and 2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 11, approval of utilities.
Number 11 is the creation of the steering committee.
Yeah, I was going to ask the planning commission their thoughts. We've talked about this, I think, a little bit in the past anyway. Something that we have been needing to do for a while is to revisit our pedestrian bicycle plan, maybe the parental responsibility area, trying to develop some cross sections for mostly collector streets. So if Allen Kirby Road, for example, gets redeveloped or something happens, what does the community want that to look like? Kind of establishing some cross sections for those kind of areas, and similar to what we've done with the sign ordinance and the aesthetic plan, we did, I think, from a staff level, benefit from having some kind of a small working group, a steering committee to help us kind of bounce ideas off of those folks and try to get people from a variety of different perspectives that maybe see certain things differently. I think that's a useful thing that we've done with our other steering committees. So we just wanted to see if you all thought that was a good idea, and if you would want to consider appointing a representative or representatives. I don't want to have a huge group of people on this committee. It needs to be a manageable group. But obviously, at least one planning commissioner would make sense to me to be on this group, if you feel like this is something that you would want us to pursue.
Mark, I'm going to appoint myself.
Okay, well, there you go.
Everyone's okay with that? You all know that this is something that I'm very passionate about. I would like to get away from calling it the pedestrian bicycle plan and adopt a multimodal transportation plan. Mostly because that brings parity to the fact that we're trying to make this safe for pedestrians and families that want to go for bike rides. And I know we'd like to address bicyclists as well, although that's a challenge on our suburban roads. But I have a woman she lives in Village Green, and she has children that like to ride their bikes to school, and it's a challenge. And so she would be a great candidate, and I think they both bike, her and her husband. And I have another person who lives in Glen Abbey who walks all over the place. So that would be someone that I would want on this. But I think we're at the point where we've got a few remaining roads left: Boring Road, Allen Kirby, Dixon, and they all need some kind treatment and not this one size fits all that we've kind of done in the past. So I would be happy to serve on this committee. And I think it's timely, and we need to kind of get on top of this.
So I guess this would go to the board to, if y'all want to appoint a representative, or it's up to you all how you want to do that.
Okay, Louise, you made a motion. I'll second it.
Okay.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Want to put together the committee? Is that
I have
what?
two people that I can add to. I can propose for it. I don't necessarily want to be the only person putting it together. If there's other residents or other people on the planning commission or the board of mayor and aldermen that have.
I would like to participate in that as well, as
Okay.
a cyclist and a pedestrian.
Okay. That would be wonderful.
And we have an expert bicyclist over here.
Well, I don't, increasingly less expert. I don't do it as much as I used to.
Student rep night.
All right. Well, that's helpful. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Citizens forum, do we have anyone who has questions or comments?
I have anybody that gave me a card. I don't know if anybody has anything.
I'll make one comment out of turn. That was,
We need you back up the microphone.
you know my name.
Well, that,
We're recording it, and that's the
Yeah.
only way we can hear you.
the people watching,
Over here just to compliment.
the people watching at
we
home
want that
can.
definitely
Well,
on
we
the
do
record.
want that on tape.
What y'all did with the sidewalks was great, because back in the day, I built Derby Chase. We know who was here. And I tried to get that done, because you had to cut out the sidewalks, just like Mark said, but I didn't. So every house was built, I had to cut the driveway, cut the sidewalk out, put the driveway in. Cost a lot more money, threw away a lot of good concrete. So that was good y'all did that. I think that's a big help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad we got that on the record.
In that case, let's see, today's the what, 18th? 18th. The November the 18th, 2021 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission is adjourned.